Well, hello everybody, and welcome to Supercharge Slack with Flow Actions. It is great to be here at CRM Stage 2022. So I want to just say a big thank you to the team for sending me this invite to speak and deliver this session. Just so you know, this is a pre-recorded session, so I will be here in the chat during the course of this session, and therefore we won't be having any live Q&A as I would normally be doing in a session like this. Rather, I'm going to be answering questions in the chat, so I'll try and get to as many of them as possible throughout the course of this session. But before we dive into really the meat and potatoes of this, I want to introduce myself a little bit. I'm not going to necessarily go through everything on this screen, but the main things I really want you to know is that I'm currently a Salesforce consultant at Cloud Galacticos, and my name is Mark Jones. I've been in the Salesforce ecosystem since 2016 and have worked as a solo admin for the majority of that time, and particularly in a non-profit space. I have 5-time certified Salesforce professional and an all-star Trailhead Ranger, and I'm very active in the Salesforce community as well. Particularly, more recently, I was the co-founder of Automation Dreaming, which is a Trailblazer community conference focused on process automation, which happened at the beginning of November. I also blog at my own site, which is called the Ragamuffin Admin, which is hosted on Medium. I'm going for a bit of a rebrand on that to pivot to something that's purely focused on flow, and that'll be coming out probably in the early stages of 2023. Most importantly for this session, I am a self-diagnosed flow addict. As you can see on the side here, I've spoken at 20 conferences now over the last 3 years. And for this year, I've spoken actually done 15 sessions at conferences across the span of the year. And the vast majority of them, 12 of them to be precise, have been on flow in some capacity, mainly talking about Flow Orchestrator or Slack actions in Flow. So I've done quite a bit of work around this area over the course of this year in terms of learning about the tool that we have available to us in Flow Orchestrator, and also the addition of Slack actions, how they work, and also being able to provide content in and around this. So I want to get into kind of what we're going to cover in this session here today. And what we're going to be looking at is basically a brief introduction to Slack actions in Flow. This is going to be a 40 to 45 minute session, so there's not going to be really a ton of time to build the flows. So we're not going to do any of that at all, because there's quite a few flows involved in the demo you're going to see today as part of this. So we're not going to build any flows. You will get to see a demo of the flows in action, and you'll also get to see a little bit under the hood about kind of how particularly Slack actions are configured. And I'll try and give as much of an overview of these flows as I can, depending on what time we have available in this session when we get to that particular section. So in terms of how this is going to be broken down, we're doing welcome introductions, which are what we're wrapping up now. We're then going to go on to talk a little bit about Salesforce and Slack, talk about the relationship that they have a little bit. I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail in that. We'll just cover some of the high level points, and particularly talk really about the flow side of it. That's going to have a bit more information in there. I'm then going to give you a brief overview of the solution that we are going to be using for this demo as part of this session. Then we're actually going to demo it. So you're going to see the flows in action, and you're going to see Salesforce and Slack side by side working together as part of that demo. So that's kind of what we're going to be doing today in this session. But as I say, if there's any questions, feel free to post it in the chat, and I'll do my best to answer them as best I can. So let's talk briefly about the relationship between Slack and Salesforce. For those of you who don't know, Salesforce purchased Slack in 2020. You probably know that already, but if you didn't, that's when they purchased it. And to this day, it is the biggest acquisition that Salesforce have made. Nothing's topped this just yet. and they bought it for a whopping $27.7 billion. So it's the biggest acquisition that Salesforce have made in terms of the monetary cost up to this point in history. The acquisition was completed in August 2021, and both of these things, the purchase and the finalization of the acquisition, all both occurred around the Dreamforces of their current year, of the year that they happened. So the initial purchase happened shortly before Dreamforce 2020, and the acquisition was finalized just before Dreamforce 2021 last year. And since then, Salesforce have done a ton of work to kind of bridge the gap between Salesforce and Slack, so you can do as much as possible seamlessly between the two. There has been traditionally applications on Slack for Salesforce. Some have been built by other companies, but there was actually one that was a Salesforce official application, and that has been, I believe that's still available to use, but that is no longer the current one to be using. They have different applications for core Salesforce and for different clouds. So you've got the Salesforce for Slack app, and there's a Slack app for Salesforce for Sales and Service Cloud and CRM Analytics, formerly known as Tableau CRM. So that's kind of a bit of a very brief overview of that. Not really much detail into that, but we don't really need that for today's session. In terms of what we are going to be looking at, we're going to be looking at Slack Actions for Flow, and this was something that was launched in beta in the Summer 22 release, and it has been ratified since then, has seen some improvements in the Winter 23 release, but these were released in the Summer 22 release that happened around May, June time this year. For Slack Actions to work, you have to have they require a connection to the Salesforce for Slack app at the minimum, or one of those other apps. You also need to assign the users who are going to be using Slack access to the permission set, which is that is available. All of this is stuff that is documented within the Slack setup wizard. I will briefly pull that up, but I won't go into detail on that, because we are not going to be doing any connecting to Slack in this. We're going to be showing you the flow actions. So I'll show you briefly that setup screen that you can go to, but we're not going to go into any detail on that in today's session. And talking about the actions, there was a number of them available to us, and some of them include the ability to create a Slack channel, the ability to join a Slack channel. This is for based on one user. You've got the option to invite users to Slack channel, and this is based on a record collection. So I tend to lean towards doing the invite user to Slack rather than join. You've got the ability to check if a user is connected to Slack as well. So what you can do there is you can run that action first, check if a collection of users are connected to Slack, and that collection can just include one user as well. But you can check if they are connected to Slack, and then if they are, you can then run your invite user action following on from that to go, hey, invite the users that we found that are connected to Slack. That is what we do in the flow that I'm going to be demoing to you today. So I think that is a slightly better methodology than just simply going with the join Slack channel action. We've also got the ability to archive a Slack channel through Slack, and it's not covered on this slide, but we also have the ability to unpin and pin messages and edit messages that we post into Slack. And with that in mind, we also do obviously have the option to post a Slack message inside of Slack from Salesforce using Flow. And as I mentioned, we've got the ability to edit those messages and to unpin or pin those messages. So there's a couple of things I want to call out here, which I don't have this noted on the slides, but I do want to note, if you're working with Slack actions in Salesforce, a really good recommendation from my side would be to somewhere in Salesforce, store the Slack channel ID, and if you're working with messages, you will need to have the message timestamp stored somewhere for those messages, because in those actions, the bulk of Slack actions in Flow require a channel ID, and the ones around messages, if you're doing editing message or pinning and unpinning messages, you need the message timestamp for that in order for those actions to work. So storing those two values somewhere in Salesforce is a good idea, in my opinion. But carrying on, we've got the ability to also create and launch screen flows in Slack. So you can have a screen flow where you have a setting that you can enable and them to be make them available for Slack, and you can then launch them inside of Slack by triggering them from as part of a subflow. And with that, there's a few things that we can do with that, which is really, really helpful to us. We can include input variables into screen flows in Slack. This was something that was not available to us until the Winter 23 update, this is a really big thing for this functionality, to be able to include input variables into those screen flows, so that we can do things that we need to do with them. That is a really big addition to that, and a really helpful one. We've got the ability to connect them to other flows, so you can connect a screen flow to a subflow. That is, say, like maybe it's another screen flow, maybe it's an auto launch flow, but we have the ability to daisy chain flows together, and we can use subflows with those screen flows that launch in Slack as well. For the screen flows, I would have to make them available in Slack though, in that side, for that to work. In terms of the data, we can access the record data within screen flows in Slack, and that works because we are using the Salesforce for Slack admin account, the application, so we can run those flows as the Salesforce for Slack app, which immediately gives us essentially the ability to bring in the data that we need for those flows. So we can do that as well, which is all really, really helpful stuff. So just give a bit of an overview. We've got around about 30 minutes left on the clock, which is great. So I'm going to give you a bit of an overview of the solution, and then we'll go into the demo. So we're going to be working with a Lightning app that I have been building and have been working on, called Slack Manager. This is a bit of a prototype application that I've built. And within this, and this is an early version, so this might change in future months. It probably will change for one particular area around the Slack messages, which I'm looking at. But we have in here, we've got 3 custom objects that we have. We have a custom object for the Slack channel. This basically just stores information about the Slack channel, such as the channel name, the channel ID, and some other information that we have in there. Particularly what record is it related to as part of that. We also have one for a Slack channel member. This is a junction object that links between a particular record. We have this set up to be either a user or a contact, and we have it relating to the Slack channel. So it's a junction between either the user or the contact, and the Slack channel. So we have that object as well. We also have a object for Slack messages. This is the thing that I'm looking at changing in the later point. I would like the idea of trying to actually get the Slack messages to surface inside the Salesforce without the need of it being a custom record. So that's something I'm looking at option wise. But at the moment, it is a custom object that creates a Slack message as a record. It's integrated via the Salesforce for Slack app, which I've mentioned, and I'll show you that briefly before we get into the demo portion. And in this solution, what we're going to demo in terms of the actions, we are going to demo for you 7 things that we can do with Slack. So we're going to demo 6 actions, and we're going to demo ScreenFlow in Slack. So the actions you're going to see is create a Slack channel, archive a Slack channel, check if a user is connected to Slack, invite a user to a Slack channel, invite users to a Slack channel, post Slack message, pin and unpin Slack message, and we're then going to wrap that up with launching. We're going to have that include that with a launching ScreenFlow inside of Slack. And again, just to note, we won't have time to go over all of the flows that we are using in detail, but we will. I'm going to try and give you a bit of an overview of the flows that we have running underneath all of these, or some of them at the very least. Just a note on here as well. With this being a prototype build, this is only relating to the case object at the moment. So we're going to be working with a case object. And basically what will happen here is when we create a case, a Slack channel be created. We'll then be able to add channel members to it. We'll also be able to post messages to it and unpin those messages. We'll also be able to archive that channel, but we'll be managing that all mainly through some of that quite a bit through the case record. And we'll get into that when we get into the demo portion in a minute or so. So we're going to pivot towards the demo, but I do want to show you the initial Slack setup wizard very briefly first. So I'm going to come out of here, and I am going to come into Salesforce here. So you can see here I'm in my Slack application, and if you want to see this initial Slack setup wizard, you just come into your setup and then click find, just type in initial Slack or initial, and you'll get initial Slack setup. And if you click on here, when it loads, you'll see that we have a wizard here. And basically, it takes you through various steps, such as agreeing to the terms and conditions. You can enable the Slack apps. You've got to add a permission set to them. You've got to enable a permission set, so we go through that, and it'll ask you which apps do you want to install, and you can install one of those apps. So you've just got to go through all of these steps in the wizard before you can run Flow actions run Slack actions in Flow. So you need to go through the steps here as is required. So that's initial Slack setup, and we are going to go now into the demo. This demo should take about around about 10 minutes or so, but we will talk you through that. So I'm going to bring my pages side by side. So now you'll see we've got Salesforce on the left and Slack on the right. And you can see that we have a general channel. This is our Slack workspace for the Slack Manager application that I use for testing and for working on this build. So to do this, we're going to create a workflow. We're going to create a case. So I'm going to open my cases, and you can see here I've got some test cases, but I'm going to create a new one. And I'm going to just set basically the fields that I need to set in order for this to run. So we're going to scroll down, and I'm going to add in the subject and the description because these get populated into the channel. So I'm going to put this down, and I'm going to call this CRM Stage 2022, and then call it test. And I'm going to just add a description here. So this is a test case for the CRM Stage 2022 demo in my session. And this will give us a description which will be populated into the Slack channel record in Salesforce. The description in Slack channels can't be populated through the create a channel action. So basically what you do is it creates the channel and you use a channel name. You set a channel name for that. So I'm going to save that. Now, and we have a case created. Now, if I go back into my channels, you'll see here we've got our CRM stage 2022 test channel, and you can see we've got the channel API name here. We've got the status of being active and the channel ID, and we can see it's related to a case. This is a pick list, which I use for dynamic forms, where I can see it is it assigned to connected to a account, a contact, an opportunity, or a case at this stage. And if it's related to any of them, this field on the right hand side of the record, which currently says related case, will change to be related account, related contact, related opportunity, and so on. At the very bottom, we have two related lists here. These would be normally on the right hand side, but because of the fact this is we've put this onto the left hand side of the screen, it's brought this list down to the bottom. So we have a list for active and inactive channel members. There's a hidden section here which brings in some calculation counts if there is any channel member records associated with this. And then we have a related list for channel messages. And you can see here we've got nothing in here as of yet. And just to show you inside of Slack, if I go to my add channels on the side here, you can see we've got the channel here. But if I go into the view, you can see that we've only got Salesforce for Slack in that channel. Because when you create a channel, the Salesforce for Slack app automatically gets added as a member to that channel, although they aren't listed as an official member if we click on that. So they are a sort of a member, but they are not an official member. What we're going to do now, we're going to go into adding a channel member, and we're going to do that via this button here, which is a quick action, which connects to a screen flow. And it comes up here, and it's going to surface us with a checkbox group of a list, and we are going to click on me. Normally I would filter this list out so it doesn't include users like automated process, chatter expert, and the like. But I haven't filtered it out to that degree just yet. But we are going to select myself because I am connected to Slack. And what happens when we click on select users? It will check that if I'm connected to Slack, and if I am, it will then add me to the channel. As we can see here, I'm now on this channel. And it also fires a notification to the user that gets connected to say you've been added to the Slack channel. So we can say they've been added to the Chaos CRM Stage 2022 test channel. And this says you should now see this in your list of accessible Slack channels. Next up, we want to send a message. And this is also a screen flow that launches from a quick action. And what we could do here is we just simply type in a message body. And this Slack action will allow us to pin the message if we want to. But it won't allow us to pin it until we've put something into the message body. Doing that via a checkbox that comes up when we type something into the box. So if I type in, this is a test message here, you can see above, we've got a checkbox here to say pin this Slack message. And what we can do is if we click on that and then click on send, it will send the message. And you'll see it's pinned the message there. So we've got that over there already. So up until now, you've seen we've only got 3 actions. We've got 3 bits of this to demo, but you've already seen 5. I want to say 5. Yes, what does it say? 5 Slack actions, and what we haven't demoed yet is archiving and launching screen from Slack. So out of those 7 things we said we were going to show, we've already been through 5 in about 5 minutes. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go into the channel message, and we are going to pop into here, and you can see here we've got this path here. So we've got pinned or unpinned. So we've got an here pinned, unpinned. I am going to set this to pinned, unpinned, and mark this as the current status. And what will happen is this will have a slight delay of up to 10 seconds because this is running on a scheduled path. In this as well, in a record triggered flow. So what will happen here is if we click on this record will unpin, but it'll take up to 10 seconds for that to unpin, and you'll see that yellow box on the right hand side here disappear. But that will take a little bit of time because there is a slight delay due to Slack being an external software. The scheduled path takes a little bit of time to run on there. So while I was doing that, I'm going to go into our case again, and I'm going to fire off the screen flow just while waiting for that to disappear. And what this screen flow that we're going to fire off it does is it asks us to approve a change to the status of the case. So if I click on edit here, and if I change the status from new to working and click on save, we'll see that it updates in Salesforce to working. But the screen flow will fire and it will ask us to approve that. And you can see there the message is now unpinned and we've got the screen flow up. So if we click on the make decision button here on the right hand side, what will pop up is our screen flow, and it'll give us some text to say, yes, it's been given status of working. We require your approval to keep this change in effect. If you don't approve of this change, we want ask them to mark the checkbox below as true. If they don't mark the checkbox, the case will revert to the previously held status of new. So let's click on that, not click on this tick box, and we'll click on make change decision. And you'll see that it says here that thank you for confirming the case status is now been set to new. So when we close that, you'll see on here, it looks like it's set to working. But if we refresh the page, it's back to new. However, if we then set this to working again, or even we change it to escalated, because the case runs on says that it has to be either working or escalated and not closed. So let's just say it is escalated, and this will then fire the screen flow again. And when that comes up, it'll be asking us to make that decision again. So we'll give that a second or two for that to come up. And that'll come up any second now. And then we will look to make that decision. And we'll show that working. So I'll have to give that a second or so. The final thing to show will be the archive Slack message on there. And you can see here the screen flow is finally come up. So you can see there's about a 10 to 15 second delay there. So I'm going to click on make decision. I'm going to approve that. And I'm going to make that change decision. So it's going to keep that as it is. And if I refresh the page here, you'll see it stayed as escalated. Now, the last thing to do here is to close the case. And what will happen is when we close the case, the channel will get archived. So we're going to click on close, and you can see here that the channel has been archived. And if we go, and we've also got a notification here to say, yes, it has been archived. And if we go to the Slack channel, we go to the test, we can see it is set to archived. And if we scroll down to the bottom, we can see the count that appeared, which we didn't see because I didn't show you this bit for the member metrics. We have one inactive member, one all-time member, because we only added one member to the channel, but the active member rate is 0 because we have 0 active members. And the active member has moved from the active member list to the inactive member list that we have via dynamic related lists. So we have all of this together. And that's really the Slack actions in effect. So you've got to see the bit of the demo. And we have 15 minutes left, or just a little bit over. So we do have a bit of time to go through some of these flows. So let me just maximize the screen. here so we get a bit of a better view. So here what we have is we have our create channel floor. Now what we have is we have a different floor that will trigger this. This is an auto launch floor. So one of the things that you can do is a little bit of a hack to make things work instantaneously is to use things such as auto launch floors to keep your actions inside, and that'll make the actions instantaneous rather than what happens with a record triggered floor where, because we have to put a Slack action on a scheduled path, and therefore that's where the delay comes in. If we have it in, say, an auto launch floor, the action happens instantaneously. This was something I demoed at Dreamforce when I combined this with Flow Orchestrator, and I put all of the background steps that Slack we would want to be done in Slack automatically. We put all of them in auto launch floors, and it then ran instantaneously. So this flow in particular, what this does is asks which object is firing the flow, whether it's account, contact, opportunity, or case. It then sets the Slack channel values, and you can see here it just basically sets and this is for the record. It sets the record as the record name, the channel description, and this is something that's collected from the triggering flow that passes it across. The channel description is also passed in through an input variable within that, and we've got the Slack channel name API, Slack channel name API name formula, and we've got it set to active. So if I was to go to the formulas, you can see here, we've got the formula here, which asks the API name, which basically puts in lowercase, the object abbreviation, and then asks for the channel suffix. The object abbreviation is here. So you can see if it's an account, we want to have that be ACC. If it's contact, CNT. If it's opportunity, op. And if it's case, case. And then that is combined with the channel suffix, which is basically brings in the record name, and it substitutes special characters. Here in this case, it substitutes spaces, commas, and colons for hyphens or dashes. And we do that. So what you would want to do is look at how you name things and then update this format to basically substitute those extra special characters, because Slack channels can't have special characters or spaces. They need to be hyphens. It then goes into the create channel action, and more Slack actions work in a similar way. You'll be asked what app you want to be using for. Do you want to be using the Salesforce for Slack app, or does it have to, or do you want to connect to a resource variable? I've only ever used the Salesforce for Slack app. Slack workspace, again, it brings up the same thing. All these will show resource. But in this case, I wanted to connect to my Slack workspace over the Slack Manager app, as we demoed. And you get the option to execute the action as either the user who runs the flow in user context or the Slack app. Most of the time, I've been using Slack app in this case. We also have the Slack channel name, which is the formula, so it sets that. And we set the channel type to public. We don't need to include this one here, but we can enter the ID of the Slack workspace to create the channel. And this is a no value specified, and the default is the ID of the Slack workspace where the Slack app is installed. So you can actually put this into other workspaces using this method. And for the output, we are storing the Slack channel ID because we want that to go into the record that we create. And we put that into the record variable, and then we close that off by creating the Slack channel using the Slack channel record variable that I have created in this flow. The next one is for the add Slack channel. We're not going to go through this too much. You saw the screen. So you have the screen that gives us the checkbox group. We have a action that converts that checkbox group into a text collection. That's something I'm going to look at changing, because this is actually an installable action I've used elsewhere, but so I'm going to look at updating that at some point soon, because I've now got a model where I don't have to use an installable action for it. And we've then got two Slack actions. we've got the check if the users are connected. And again, it just basically asks us for the text collection, which is the that checkbox, the collection I mentioned I convert into a text collection from the checkbox group. And then it asks what we want to do. But we've also got in the output variables, two collections that creates, one for the users who are connected to Slack, one for the users who aren't connected to Slack. And this is why I prefer using the this and combine it with the check invite users to Slack. So we've got this action here, which is the invite user to Slack channel. Again, asks us for the channel ID, and it asks us for the collection for the user we're going to invite. Again, this is my preferred methodology for it. You could use a join one, but the join one is only one-to-one. I prefer using this one because it allows us to add multiple people to the channel if we need to add multiple people. We then loop around the connected users that we've created from that text collection. We add them to a single record variable to set the current member for that. And then we add that current member into a collection that we use to create multiple records. And we loop around that until we're done. We then create the Slack channel member records, and we retrieve the custom notification that we send. What you saw there, we said you've now been added to the Slack channel. We get the custom notification ID, and then we send that notification inside the flow. The send Slack message is a relatively simple one. We've got the screen that sends these, where we can configure the Slack message that we saw. We then create the Slack message. Again, this will all look fairly familiar. We'll ask for the conversation ID. This is the channel ID, or you can do it to a group direct message. You can't send it as a direct message to an individual. It has to be a group direct message. And I use as the Slack message, which is the message body from that screen that you saw, and it connects asks us to point it to a Salesforce record as well. So we've got this connected to the Salesforce record in there. And as the output variable, we collect the timestamp, and we use that because what we are going to do in this flow is actually run a pin Slack action if we say that we want to pin the message. So after that, we set the Slack message values, which we have here, and we just put this on here, and we then ask, run it through a decision, create the message record. We ask if it's pinned. If the message is pinned, we then go through use that timestamp, and we pin the message inside of Slack. So we can see here, we run through and we pin the message by using that timestamp. So here's the timestamp that we created. And then we say, yes, we're going to pin that. And we close that off by updating the record to say it is pinned. In terms of the unpinning one, we have a record triggered for this, which is why you saw a bit of a delay. So what happens is on the immediate path, it pins or unpins the Slack message. We don't need to do anything with the pinned or unpinned field because we use that to trigger it. If we go into the settings for the flow, we see that the pin status is unpinned, and we've got it to only run when a record is updated to meet that criteria. But in the schedule path, which we have set to run 0 minutes after, again, this will take several seconds. We then put in the timestamp and ask it to unpin the message. In terms of the screen flow, we have this firing on the case object for here, and we have this basically where we set this to whether it has a status of working or escalated but does not equal closed. And we again fire it when it's only when the record's been changed to meet those criteria. So it doesn't run anytime you edit. It only runs if you've changed it from one stage to another and those stages equal either working, or escalated, and it doesn't equal closed. On the immediate path, we update the prior status to be the prior status of the record using record prior value. So that would just pull in the value of the status field for the prior and then just populate that field. We then actually have a get on the case record, because what we want to do, where we pull it in, so we pull in get the Slack channel where the related case equals that case ID, and then we fire the Slack message in there. So we have the scheduled path, we pull in the information for that message, and we have the Slack message that goes into here. We could have used a text template for this, but I haven't done that on this occasion. But you could use a text template, just so you know. Slack messages, the Slack message action doesn't allow for rich text at this time in there. It only allows for plain text using the native flow functionality. So we can set the button label to be make decision, and you can see here we populate these variables, which then get displayed in the course of the flow. And in our last few minutes, I'll show you the last two flows that we have. We have our confirm case status, which is the screen flow itself. So we pull up that screen which says yes, want to approve that. If it's been approved, it doesn't do anything because it keeps the changes that were made in Salesforce and goes straight to the confirmation screen. If it's not approved, what it'll do is it will set the prior status to be the proposed case status, and they'll set the status to be the previous case status, or we pull them in from that screen flow, that record triggered flow that we had before. And we can see here we have this confirmation screen. The final one is our archive Slack one, and this is an auto launch flow. So again, there's another flow that we use to trigger this, and this flow here asks us what object is it firing from, and it then gets the channel related to whichever object it's firing from. So for example, we go to the case one here, we can see here, so the related case equals the record ID that we pass into this flow, and we have it so that we keep the channel ID and the ID in separate variables, because we don't actually need to do anything with that, so we just keep them in separate variables. We then have the task of archiving the channel, and as you can see here, all we need for the archive channel ID is the Slack channel ID, and then what we do is we then go update the Slack channel record to archived, and after that we go through and go through all the Slack channel members, we loop around them again, and we set them to inactive, and we update the channel member records in bulk to say those are no longer active, and we then fire that final custom notification off to say that they are their channel has been archived. So that's everything that we have. And with that, I just want to wrap up in our last minute or so and say again, a big thank you for having me. I do have a suite of resources that I've created related to Slack and Slack Actions. So if you scan the QR code on the screen, you can find those resources there. You can also check me out on social media at This Is Mark Jones, or again, find my blog at medium.com and Ragamuffin Admin. And with that being said, I want to say a big thank you for having me, and I hope that you enjoy the rest of the conference.